order. Roll call, please. Mike?
Helwig,
Here.
Holland,
Here?
Humphrey,
Here.
Genowine,
Here.
Lettler,
Here.
Price,
Here.
Ward,
He's on mute. Or he can't hear us.
Here.
There we go.
Wilson,
Here.
Mayor Collier Wise.
Okay. Do I have a volunteer for the pledge rather than all of us starting? Everybody raise their hand. Anybody? Julie, how about your son? Will he do? No?
I'll do it, Rich.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Minutes for July 6th, special meeting, July 6th, regular meeting, and July 9th, special meeting. Any comments?
Approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please answer roll call.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland,
Aye. Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to it, Mike? John? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Currently at the office here, City Hall, there are no visitors to be heard. Do you have any online or anything else? None? Okay. So therefore, being no visitors to be heard, I don't think I need to read what the visitors can and cannot do. Public hearing, item 6A, is the first reading of Ordinance 1416, amending Title 15, Chapter 155, Section 155.058 C and D, Bliss Point Planned Development District, to allow for single-family detached dwellings and motor vehicle sales, displays, and rentals, and to remove all multiple family dwelling uses. And Jose, please.
Thank you. In 2013, the Vermillion Area Chamber and Development Company, or the VCDC, led a drive to create Bliss Point PDD. The need for creating Bliss Point came about due to a community-wide shortage of affordable single-family housing. The VCDC purchased approximately 30 acres to develop, part of which was to be affordable housing. For ease of construction of Bliss Point was divided into two phases. The first phase consisted of all of the bluff lots, the cul-de-sac, and other internal lots within the district. At that time, the idea was to use the development of phase one to fund the second phase, which would consist of higher density residential development. Currently, most of phase one has been developed, and the VCDC is starting the process of working on phase two. On June 26, 2020, the city received an application from the VCDC and Mr. Kevin Bliss requesting to amend the current Bliss Point zoning. The application requested that Area C be amended to allow single-family detached dwellings as permitted use and to remove all multiple family dwelling uses from this area. Additionally, the applicant requested that Area D allow motor vehicle sales, display, and rentals as permitted use. The city published a notice on the Plain Talk advertising the meeting, posted signs on the property, and mailed notices to owners within 250 feet of affected property area or the property to be rezoned. The City Planning Commission held two meetings on this item. The first meeting was on July 13th. Due to a lack of property owner notification, the commission was not able to make a recommendation at that meeting. A second meeting was scheduled for today at 5 o'clock or 5:30. This second meeting was properly advertised. Notices were posted on the property, and again, all notices were mailed to the owners within 250 feet. At both of these meetings, only 3 members of the public commented. Planning and Zoning Commission received all those comments. 2 of the comments were in favor of the proposed changes to Area D. 1 person asked for the proposed changes to Area C to be explained further, and another person asked if the proposed changes to Area D apply to all of the empty lots within the area. As mentioned previously, one of the original intents of Bliss Point was to create affordable single-family housing. This required that the VCDC offer a wide variety of housing styles, single-family detached, single-family attached, multifamily dwellings, and the new development. Phase 1 of the development consisted mainly of areas for the construction of single-family detached as permitted uses, with some locations for single-family attached dwellings. So these would be townhomes as conditional use. The combination of these 2 different types of housing has proven unpopular with some Bliss Point residents, as many of them see the increase in residential density as negative. This is due to the perception that the increased density in such close proximity negatively affects property value. In an effort to address this issue, the applicants are proposing to amend the allowable uses within Area C by eliminating all of the multiple family dwelling uses. Additionally, they are requesting that single-family detached dwellings be allowed as a permitted use. And it should be noted that currently there is no, that type of use is actually not allowed within Area C, so this would be a significant change. This means that for Area C, both attached and detached single-family dwellings will be allowed as permitted uses. The applicants are trying to balance, again, the original concept of Bliss Point, offering affordable housing, a wide variety of housing styles, and the perception that residential property values decrease when different housing styles are built in close proximity. Applicant is also requesting a change to the ordinance regarding Area D. The intent here is to allow for construction of small car dealerships. These dealerships may sell products that are more limited, for example, foreign vehicles, antique vehicles, collector vehicles, etc., and harder to find vehicles. The intent, again, is to offer some space for the owner to display and sell the vehicles, and it would be a small number of vehicles. You're talking about maybe 10 vehicles to be displayed in the outside of the lot. There's no financial consideration besides the cost of publication. The Planning Commission at tonight's meeting we had that meeting, and they recommend that the council adopt the ordinance as published. Staff concurs with the commission's recommendation. Again, it should be noted that the VCDC is attempting to address 2 very different items and trying to marry these into something that might be palatable, I guess, to some of the property owners, hopefully a majority of them, with regards to the residential aspect of it. And then secondly, the commercial aspect of it, or the business aspect, they're just trying to make an additional location for a business to take place with offering a smaller site for a car dealership. With that, I have, I guess if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Seeing no public to respond to this, I'll pass it to the council. Do you have any questions, council? Nobody? Yes, John. Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Nate, I think you could maybe answer this question better, or maybe Jose can. So, the Gregoires currently own the Lot D, all of it?
Okay, Area D is...
Area D.
Yeah, Area D is actually split into multiple lots. There's 3 lots, if I'm not mistaken. One of them is owned by Mr. Bliss, and that's off Main Street. Then there's an empty lot between Mr. Bliss's and Bunyan's. And there's another lot over on the southwest corner of Rockwell and Stanford that's empty as well. So My understanding, and Nate can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that Mr. Gregoire is looking to purchase the lot that's between Mr. Bliss and Bunyan's facing Main Street. And that's the only one that he would be interested in purchasing.
And just to confirm, I apologize, this is Nate. Just to confirm, Jose is correct in what he just stated. It is contingent on the action taken. There is an offer for this lot. Currently, at this time, the BCDC does own the lot that Jose just explained.
And if I could follow up, there is currently a building in Section D, yes, with a business on it?
Yep, Mr. Bliss.
That's Bliss's, okay. And Mr. Bliss is okay with the idea of a car dealership? Has he been asked?
Mr. Bliss actually is one of the applicants.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, I'll be quiet for a while.
Any other comments? Yes, Julia.
Thank you. So I made some comments earlier at noon, and so I wanted to make sure that I repeated those. And so since we're talking about the lot on Main Street, I'll start with that point first. I understand that the idea here is that it's supposed to be a small dealership and that there's already a plan of what this would look like. My concern here is, and I've talked about this before, is legislating for an individual person. So even though this person has in mind something that's relatively small and that people are agreeable to, if we change the zoning plan and then he moves away, somebody else purchases that property later, there's nothing to say that that person will do something much larger and much different, especially since we're including not just these small specialty cars as the plan is, but could include larger motor vehicles as well. And so I think it's really problematic to start looking at, well, how do we legislate for one individual person as opposed to, is this an appropriate location for this type of zoning? And I'm not entirely convinced that it is. And so it just worries me to go down that road. Although I think the use as planned doesn't seem very problematic. I'm more concerned about long-term effects of this.
Yes, Jose.
I guess, and I'm not going to be able to respond to all of the concerns and comments that you had, Julia, but one thing that I can explain or say is that the proposal, as far as the ordinance is written today, or is presented to the council, actually we're looking into limiting the display of vehicles outside of the building itself to no more than 10. So that's actually, you're not going to be seeing what you see on the north side of Cherry at any point where you just have, hundreds of cars along Cherry Street. That's not the intent of this area or this particular lot. And we picked 10 based on the fact that we don't think that he's even going to be able to get to that point as far as how many cars he can fit in there. So I don't know if that eases some of your concerns, but as far as legislating, I don't know, I guess, how to respond to it.
That's fine. What about like the size of the vehicles? Is it limited to smaller vehicles, or could someone have 10 RVs there?
Let me look, I'm going to have my ordinance here. Well, you can't see it, but I have it here. Let me look through it really quick. I think that the definition for motor vehicle is actually such that it's just for vehicles, for cars, not for trucks or RVs of that sort. But let me just verify that before I say that, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Yep. So I don't know if maybe Nate can answer some other questions that you have.
I appreciate it, but I would actually echo exactly what Jose just said there. Councilwoman Hellweek, I completely understand your concerns on that. I think that was actually the intent of when we were rewriting that a little bit, is it was one of those to try to help fix maybe the intent of writing it from the start and try to help be supportive to the concept of the business for that, but also I think your concern of, we are not concerned about the current person purchasing it, but maybe whatever that next person might be, and how do we govern and legislate for that? I think that's a really, a very well thought out concern. I think that's actually what I think is nice about this legislation that's being proposed right now, is having that limit of those up to 10 cars helps alleviate some of that concern. Or that was the intent also in the way in which we tried to write that.
Yes, Steve.
Is it possible, Jose, to have a conditional use be, have a car dealership be a conditional use? And does a conditional use extend, I can't remember the answer to this, does a conditional use extend if ownership changes?
Okay, so yes, this could be a conditional use rather than a permitted use if the council wishes that. This meeting would probably be the one to make that change. Now, as far as the use staying with the owner, with the property rather than the owner, yes, it stays with the property. So if Mr. Gregoire purchased it, gets a conditional use for it, and then 3 years from now leaves it to somebody else, then that person can continue with the use of a car dealership in that location.
And the only reason it wouldn't continue as a car dealership is someone stopped using it as a car dealership, right?
Yep, if they stopped using it for a year or longer, then they use visas, and then they would go back.
So conditional use doesn't really solve the concern that Julia just expressed.
Probably no. I'm going to say no. One thing, going to Julia's original question, if I may, unless you have another one, Steve.
No.
I guess as far as definitions, Julia, for motor vehicles, the definition for motor vehicle does include buses, trucks, trailers, and campers, let's say. But I would say that we would probably still tell Mr. Gregoire that he's not going to be selling trucks, let's say, in that location. When I say a truck, I'm not talking about a pickup truck. I'm talking about a semi-trailer in that location. And I would base that decision based on the fact that we do have a separate item within the zoning ordinance for that type of use. We actually have a truck repair, sales, and or service. So it wouldn't make sense for me to have one that encompasses everything and then narrow down another one. So I would say no to Mr. Gregoire trying to do that.
Okay, I think that sounds good, and I actually do think that the conditional permission, that does help a little bit to say that this is a conditional use and not a permitted use. I would actually prefer that if other members of the council would be amenable to that.
Any other comments? Do I hear a motion?
I'm certainly open to that.
Pardon, Steve?
I'm sorry I barged in, but Julia asked. I'm certainly open to changing this to conditional use.
John, please.
I might ask Mr. McCullough on if they want to take the language of motor vehicle sales and display, motor vehicle sales, display, and rental. In the item that was advertised, it was going to be listed as a permitted use. If I understand what I'm hearing from the council, they'd like to move it into the conditional uses for Area D. Can they do that with first reading, or is that? Okay, I just want to make sure before we went down that track. Thank you.
Yes, Howard?
I would go for the conditional use permit, because I think that would, I don't know whether we could make it a little stronger that if the property is sold, they have to reapply for the conditional use permit, or whether we can do that or not. Jim, would that work?
He's asking if that would work. Yes. Are you making that into a motion to approve this with that change? Yes, Julia?
Sorry, I noticed there are two issues here. Are we able to separate these two issues, or should we continue on the discussion on the, on the apartment issue, on the Area C?
I think it's one item, so you need to agree on all of them, I guess.
After
And
this,
that,
after this is over, Julia, I'm going to ask about that because I think it should have been split from the beginning, but we'll go
Okay,
through
and-
with this right now.
in
So-
that case, may I continue my discussion of that use, Rich?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Julia.
May I continue in the discussion then on the second item, the second related item?
Did you understand? Oh, yes, please, go on.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't want to take up too much of the floor if it was not permissible. So, as I mentioned at the noon meeting earlier today, I just want to make sure that I publicly express my disappointment in this. I really was happy to see the Bliss Point initial plans. I thought that was a really well thought out plan. I think we really do need more, and I've said this before, lowercase affordable housing, not necessarily capital A, meaning federally subsidized affordable housing. We need regular homes for regular people to purchase. As you know, people move to Vermillion who are young professionals, in particular, perhaps related to the university, young professors, young administrators moving to the area, perhaps looking for their first home. They need to find some appropriate housing for them. And I do recognize that the building of apartments that we've seen in the past year or two have affected that, and that the market is likely saturated with apartments now. That said, I really feel disappointment still in that we weren't able to push on moving on those faster so that we can continue those original plans. I really am concerned that we are creating this more affluent community in the corner of Vermillion, and having people who don't want to have multiple dwellings, apartments, townhouses in their backyards, the so-called not in my backyard people. And that really concerns me. And while I am assured that we can find additional housing spaces and more affordable housing throughout our community, I worry about creating an economic segregation, which is something I think we've done really well here by having, for example, our elementary schools being divided by grades as opposed to geographic area. Things like that are important. I think they really help our community, as we've talked about many, many times. And so I'm really not happy with this change. I understand why it's happening. Again, we are saturated with those apartments, but I am very disappointed in this happening.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, Travis.
I'd like to follow up with Julia's comments. I understand that these are two separate issues that are both in this proposal, changing the allowable dwellings and then also changing the permitted or the conditional use. When I read it, I didn't like how they were bundled together, I think is how I'll put it, because I'm concerned about moving away from affordable housing in Vermillion. Affordable housing is a broader concept, and there are more modalities to that than just apartments. And so I think when a person reads this ordinance, and I'm going to be honest, how I read it the first time I read it, I read it to say, and I understand these are two separate issues, we want to move away from the affordable housing framework that we had originally envisioned, but we would like to do a boutique vintage car dealership instead. And I understand that's not the intent, but it struck me as a bad juxtaposition of the two issues, where on the one hand you want to the original vision of this Bliss Point isn't kind of panning out in the reality of the world we live in, but then to say, well, but we do want to do a vintage boutique car dealership. I understand where the issue is coming from, and I understand kind of the impetus for wanting the change. I just think it was unfortunate in how they were bundled together, and that's all I'll say.
Yes, Catherine?
So I'm kind of going to put Nate on the spot. Sorry, Nate. At noon, I had expressed similar concerns about the reduction of lowercase a affordable housing, particularly, as Julia pointed out, single-family homes that are in the affordable range for young professionals moving to town. I really do feel like that's an empty spot in the housing market in Vermillion. And I had asked Nate at noon if there was a way for the proposed change to somehow encourage or prioritize the building of mid-priced homes that are still single-family or attached dwellings that would appeal to young professionals who are buying their first home or looking for a mid-priced home. Nate expressed at noon that that really wasn't a practical option for various reasons, and that there were other initiatives happening in town to try to promote that level of affordability in single-family home ownership. So I am going to put Nate on the spot and ask him to speak on that point. And if it's not happening here in the Bliss Point area as originally planned, where and how can we expect it to be happening in town? Sorry, Nate. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that.
Go ahead.
Not a problem at all. And I really do appreciate the question. And as we talked about at noon today, I think one of the challenges that we have really is, again, what we're talking about here right now is 6 years ago, the council, some on the council, at the time, and some that have kind of graduated into it, we are seeing the transition of the concept of what Bliss Point was and what Bliss Point was really sold to the community and to the council for, really to try to help accommodate for not only balancing an affordable housing option in our community, but also a property tax generating ability to be able to pay for the infrastructure in which we developed Bliss Point. And the challenge that we have right now is, unfortunately, I have to deliver the tough message to the council that while the intent of Bliss Point and the affordable housing was extremely well intended, the challenge that we have right now is that it is hard for us to achieve. And what we are trying to communicate to the council is that we are not giving up on the concept of affordable housing. When we are trying to attract jobs, we are trying to balance attracting businesses that want to be able to benefit from the relatively low wages that South Dakota has in a cost of living, but also balance being able to have good affordable wage or good income wages where we can get good paying jobs in our community, because that will increase, the wealth and the tax structure that we have, throughout our community. The challenge that we have is the trade jobs that exist to be able to build those houses do not exist when it comes to affordable housing. And so the challenge that we have is what many of our South Dakota communities and what many of our Midwest communities face is affordable housing is a really, really tough definition for us to define. And I want to be very, very clear, and I know everybody on the council knows and trusts us on this, but we want to be clear that we're not giving up on affordable housing. But we need to clarify from the original description that was given to this council on Bliss Point in saying that Bliss Point and the acres that surround it will be the answer to our goal of affordable housing. I have a responsibility to present to this council to say that we cannot ensure to you that we can accommodate affordable housing within the parameters and the geographical location of Bliss Point. But that is not to say that the VCDC and our intents are giving up on the concept of affordable housing. When we change up this ordinance that we're discussing here today, we are talking about individual single-family homes or possibly townhomes. Townhomes are the best opportunity that we have for affordable housing for the description that many of you have talked about here today. Young families, young professionals, those who starting their career, townhomes are a fantastic opportunity to try to meet that price point where a person hammering on the roof is being paid a livable wage, but also we're able to sell that house for a fair value in affordable housing. So we're trying to meet that, and this gives us a chance to accommodate that and to be able to continue to move along that way, for us to be able to have individual houses. I do think that one of the ways that we can try to adjust from that original vision of phase one to the original, or to the next vision of phase two, is to accommodate in maybe our covenants. Maybe it's going to be a different size of a house as the minimum square feet that we can have that can help drive down some of that cost. So there are ways for us to do this, but this is sort of our presentation.
I need your.
This is sort of our way to present to the council of saying, this is our way, again, to try to help achieve some of the affordable housing, but also I want to try to navigate through a little bit of the level set of how we might be able to realize that we can't be this only solution for affordable housing in Bliss Point. We want to make sure to communicate that appropriately to council. So I appreciate the question. I appreciate the concern. I want to stress again that the VCDC is not giving up on the concept of affordable housing. We just need to reset a little bit of the expectations and say that this is actually our best chance for us to continue that, that effort in reaching affordable housing as we continue to grow the workforce and the availability of affordable housing in Vermillion.
Can I just follow up, Rich?
Yes, yes, go ahead, Catherine, then Lindsay.
Okay, so just to be clear, in the ordinance, attached dwellings or townhomes remain a usage in this area. Single-family homes are being added and multifamily homes are being removed. Is that right?
Yes, you're correct, Catherine.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Lindsay.
I'm not familiar with the covenants of Bliss Point. Is there, or I don't, maybe this would be part of the original, whatever. But are there any expectations around owner-occupied versus rental properties in Bliss Point?
Yes, if I may answer that.
Yes, yes.
President Holland, okay, thank you. So phase one is where the covenants exist right now. Our intent is to create covenants in phase two. We are going to start, just to provide some clarity, we are going to start with what that phase one covenants look like and start to adjust if we see accordingly. But to answer your question, when it comes to owner-occupied or rental, in the covenants right now, the way that Bliss Point phase one is you can have rentals throughout any area of Bliss Point phase one. The only limitations that it might be is that you cannot have more than 2 unrelated individuals. So the best way of an example that I might be able to provide is maybe 3 individuals who are all, 3 college students renting a single house that have no relation together. If I were to rent a house at Bliss Point and I were to bring in, rent it with one other person, that's another person who's unrelated, but that's only 2. You just can't have 3. So there is a little bit of a limitation when it comes to owner-occupied versus rental. But just to be clear, you can have rentals out at Bliss Point at this time. I hope that answers the question I believe that you asked.
It does, yeah. What I was trying to get at is, we do have a lot of people who come to town in that middle income range that maybe aren't sure that they're ready or are not financially ready to start with home ownership, but they also don't want to live in an apartment building. So if the Area C could help them have a nice family home, that might help meet that lowercase a affordable also.
Yes, Steve. Turn your mic on, Steve.
I'm sorry. Nate, do you know if what housing prices have done over the last 5 years in Vermillion? Do we have any way to track that?
We do have a way to track that. We would be able to. I apologize, but I do not have that specific information for you at this time. I will tell you that, which is probably a good estimated guess, is that house prices have increased over the last 5 years. I am more than happy to be able to provide a little bit of a better summary to you. I'm sorry I don't have that information to you though right now.
Okay, I would like to see that. And what other ways do you know of that we could encourage single-family homes, less expensive single-family homes in Vermillion that we're not doing right now?
If I may, I think a couple of the initial things, and this is, I want to again really stress that this is something that we're trying to look at right now as well. One of the challenges that we had in Bliss Point Phase 1 was in our covenants, we had a minimum requirement for a square footage for a house. Very well intended because we wanted to be able to help shape the neighborhood. But unfortunately, one of those results of those good intentions was also we were then driven by a material cost. And so every time you see a natural disaster, every time you see an increase in lumber costs, we aren't even paying our employees. We aren't even, and when I mean employees, I mean our construction employees, not VCDC employees. But we aren't even paying our employees of our workforce that are putting the houses together, that are building those, anything different, because we're trying to accommodate to the increase in the cost of the material. And so one of the things that we really want to look at when it comes to Phase 2 is how do we balance that in being able to build up a good, attractive neighborhood that increases the property value at an appropriate rate, but also does not force us to spend more money than necessary to be able to achieve affordable housing. That is going to be one of the biggest keys, is when we can try to control that part of the market a little bit better. And one thing that we unfortunately did was when we wrote those covenants and we had a minimum square footage requirement, we basically committed to not only a minimum square footage, but you're ultimately committing to a minimum amount of material. And that material cost is not something that we can control locally. That is controlled nationally, regionally, all aspects outside of the realm of control in Vermillion. And so that, I think, will be one of those aspects. I think it will be looking at those parts of the aspects of how do we provide the ability for us to control that cost a little bit better, as opposed to rely on a national or a regional material cost.
Well, what about homes that are already built? I mean, we have, in the neighborhood I live in, Pine Street is full of relatively small footprint homes that I would guess are more affordable than the homes at Bliss Point. And have there been discussions, or can this council encourage discussions or encourage any investment in preserving neighborhoods for single families, in homes that already exist? And is that something that's possible, plausible? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a really, really great point. And I also, I want to reiterate that is what you're talking about there is specifically something that we've talked about as well. And I want to stress one of the points and one of the challenges to this is one of the things that we do also want to stress is we want to say that while Bliss Point is a great opportunity to continue increasing the inventory of houses in Vermillion, what not only it does is creates the ability for the market to be able to have new homes, but what it can also do is it can increase the inventory of those internal community homes that then could be great investment properties or great opportunities for affordable housing that might not be new houses, but could be houses that people can put sweat equity in, that they can purchase and they can afford, all of that type of stuff. The next level of that, of what we've discussed, is as the council has been updated, Vermillion Now 3, it has been a fantastic start. We are about 1 year into the 5-year initiative of that, where we raised just under $2.1 million. Our goal for that, one of those main aspects, was housing and to be able to help recruit businesses and the housing aspect of that. One of the things we wanted to be able to do was be able to say, not only how do we invest in Bliss Point, but how do we take the investments of Bliss Point and invest it then into our internal part of our community. Maybe those are grants that might exist on those that are looking at investing in those properties, like the houses that you're speaking of, specifically around your home and around the area of that neighborhood. This allows us the ability to be able to help balance out the market and allows us to be able to, again, not only invest in Bliss Point, but take the investments from Bliss Point and spread those throughout the community. That again is, and I apologize we haven't been able to communicate that, but that's also one of the intents by saying, listen, as Bliss Point continues to be successful as it is, we can take the investments and we can spread that out to those other housing options, which are not just defined by the geographical or the definition of what Bliss Point sits in. I think what you're speaking of is a really, really great possibility for us to be able to work on. And we have some possible options and some programs that we want to be able to roll out to try to do that.
Well, I will be supportive of that sort of a type of program on the council and anything I can do to help. But I do think we need to flesh it out and make it a real thing at some point, because I think that is a goal that this council has stated over and over again, is to try and that's the reason we supported Bliss Point in the first place. So thank you for your remarks.
We've drifted away from the first reading of the ordinance, so please, let's get back to this. This is all informative and very good, but we should get back to it. So, yes,
I'm going to move approval. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead, Catherine. You move approval?
I was going to move approval with the change to conditional use instead of allowable use for the car dealership.
The conditional use can the conditional use stay with the owner? I think that we had an affirmative, or Howard asked that question.
And that we can do that?
I don't know if we got it.
Just a second, Steve. Jim, can we do that?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question. You're asking if you can approve the Area C zoning change as presented and to adopt the Area D zoning change proposal as amended from permitted use to conditional use in one motion?
I think the question is whether the conditional use can be limited to one owner and then reapply. They'd have to reapply for that conditional use if the property were to sell.
I think I don't think that would be appropriate to limit the conditional use to one owner, because then it basically is a spot zone for one favored owner who has a contingency in a purchase agreement. I think it has to be for whoever would want to do that later. And if the Planning Commission, when they have their conditional use hearing, wants to put conditions on the length of time that it would last or some other things, then I think that would be appropriate. But to limit this to one owner, I think is a spot zone specifically designed to favor one individual person who has a contingency in a purchase agreement.
Okay, then my motion is just to change it to a conditional use.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Any other discussion? Thank you. Mike, roll call vote, please.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Motion passes. I forgot to do my gavel. Thank you. Thank you all. It was a good discussion. I'd like to thank you, Nate, for your input. Okay. Item 6B is a site transfer of retail on-sale liquor license for Leo's Sports Bar and Grill, LLC, for Leo's Sports Bar at 11 Market Street to include 7 Market Street. And Mike, please.
An application was received for the site transfer of the retail on-sale liquor license for Leo's Sports Bar and Grill, LLC, for Leo's Sports Bar at 11 Market Street to include 7 Market Street. The owner of Leo's has purchased the 7 Market Street and would like to expand the existing liquor license into this area when the renovations are complete. The police chief's memo is attached and states there's no issue with the establishment that would affect holding the license. The council has the ability to transfer a license on basically 2 criteria: suitable person and suitable location. With respect to the location, there's the current license issued at 11 Market Street that they're wanting to expand into 7 Market. There's also some other licenses within the block area there. With respect to suitable person, the council determined the applicant is of suitable moral character. The council has issued the current liquor license to Leo's Sports Bar and Grill for the last number of years. The site expansion to 7 Market Street. If it is determined this is a suitable location, the motion should include with the approval of the site transfer contingent upon occupancy by the building inspector. The $150 fee has been paid. Following input from the public hearing, the council will be asked to make a decision on whether to approve or deny the expansion of the liquor license from 11 Market Street to 7 Market Street.
Thank you, Mike. There is no one in the audience, public, to speak, so I'll turn to the council. Comments? I have a question. Perhaps it's from Mike or whoever knows. This is not going to be 2 separate locations. They're going to remove the wall or make it a continuous thing?
There will be some doorways in between to allow to move between the buildings.
So it's essentially one dwelling is what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Yes, good. Okay, thank you. Council?
Move approval with the condition of occupancy.
Second.
Okay, it's first and seconded. Then any further discussion? Mike, roll call vote, please.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey, Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
Mayor Holland,
Aye.
or President Holland, sorry.
Thank you, I've been promoted already. Aye, thank you very much. Okay, that is all of the public hearings. We're moving to old business, and the first 7 and only is COVID-19 issues. And before John responds, I'd like to say that this has been added and will continue to be added for as long as COVID is an issue. So public and or council, if you have something you'd like talked about or spoken to, please notify John and we'll bring it up at this point. So John, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Staff didn't have any items on this. I do, in visiting with the city attorney, excuse me, this afternoon, I think what he suggested is that we probably should have some specific language if we regard to the council be taking action on this item. Jim wanted to expand on that. Then we may need something more detailed than the way we had initially listed it on here. But we had no report to present. It was requested to be added, and that's why we have it before us this evening.
Jim first, then Julie.
COVID-19 issues can be discussed tonight, but I think it's similar to your visitors to be heard section. I don't think any real action can be taken tonight because it's so vague as to what the COVID-19 issues would entail. If there were an emergency resolution that stated something, then it's specific, or an ordinance, or whatever it might be. I guess the last issue where that's kind of prompted this to come on the agenda as a continuing item is the playground and basketball court issue last time. I think we just have to be more specific as to what COVID-19 things are being addressed. The whole purpose of the open meetings law that requires us to publish 24 hours in advance is to give the public notice of what we're going to be talking about. And the way this is listed, with no specificity at all, leaves practically everybody, I think even including some of the city council and staff and me and everybody, kind of in the dark as to what's coming up, much less the public. So it would be more of a visitors to be heard. You can discuss things. I don't think you can take any action. You can direct staff to look into things and report back or whatever, but probably nothing you can really act on under this broad of a heading where there's nothing specific. You look at every other item on the agenda, and there is a specific action that's the public's being informed is going to occur or be considered at least. And so that's the difference between the way this is listed under old business. I think it's more like visitors to be heard. We'll listen to anything that the public wants to bring up, but we won't act on it that night. So,
Jim, are you suggesting that this be moved from old business to go under visitors to be heard, be a sub of that, of COVID-19 issues?
if you're going to have it on the agenda and you're going to discuss new things that haven't been discussed before or haven't been decided before, I would say it would be new business. If you're going to review some things that have already been acted upon and discussed, I think it's appropriate for old business, but because there's nothing specific that you really wouldn't be able to take any action on.
I wasn't expecting action, but Julia, please go ahead.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting us to take any action tonight, but I was wondering if we would be able to keep the item under old business. If we specifically asked if we could review the items that are related to COVID that we have right now. For example, I'm specifically talking about the Thursdays on the Plots closings and the extended licenses and parking spots. I think those are 3 items right now that we have currently open, but that I would like to review if there's an issue such as a sudden increased spike in cases.
If I understand Jim correctly and what you're requesting, we could do this information only and not be able to make a decision. Would that be acceptable? Because if we had to make a decision, we'd have to publish it ahead. Is this, Steve, you originally brought this up. Would that fit your format?
It does, and you know, I did not think this through completely, but I do like the idea of at least having an agenda item or line item in which we have at least the opportunity for the public to bring up any issues, or if we feel like we need to have, if there's a case like Julie was saying where we have an unexpected spike, and if we need to discuss something and decide on an emergency meeting, then perhaps this would be a time to do this. I certainly didn't plan to have us vote on any item through this agenda item, but one of the things that Lindsay mentioned and that I was interested in as well is discussing masks and the ability or inability of the city to mandate masks in indoor public spaces. So that was one thing I was going to ask Jim about today, but I wasn't planning on any votes, or nor did I want there to be any votes in this space.
Okay, so I think in this case, we will discuss where to put this in the future, but we'll have a column somewhere for COVID issues for discussion, and if it becomes something that needs to be acted upon, we will have to then make it an item for the next following meeting. Okay? John, we're done with that one?
Comments?
Okay. No more comments right now? Okay. Let's move on to new business then. And so
I'm sorry, Rich.
Sorry.
I do have a comment under this old business.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Jim McCullough, if I could ask you, it seems to me that when we got rid of the emergency ordinance restricting bars and restaurants to certain capacities, that kind of limited our ability to enact emergency ordinances or any other kind of ordinances that are COVID related in behavior or instituting restrictions on businesses. And there have been some suggestions that the public schools in town could not enact a mask requirement in the schools without permission from the city or an ordinance in the city that would require masks in the schools or elsewhere. Can you talk on that issue a little bit for us and clear that up?
When you enacted your earlier emergency COVID ordinances restricting restaurants and bars from being open or just takeout and things like that, you accepted from that ordinance educational institutions and the university and so forth, and so they weren't part of that anyway. But I think my opinion is that the city, if they wanted to regulate face mask usage, they could consider that. They would have to do that within the strict parameters that the legislature has given you. You would have to demonstrate that it's necessary or expedient to suppress the spread of disease, which is the way the statute that the legislature has given you reads. As far as the school district, they can regulate their operations as they see fit. If they want to have some face mask regulations in place, they can certainly adopt those. And then the wild card, though, that could come into play is if the governor's office jumps in, they close schools or recommended schools be closed, and so that's what happens statewide. If the governor's office were to step in and say something, then that's going to be something that any local government's going to have to pay attention to. But absent anything like that, the city and school district are able to act independently on their own to regulate their own areas that the legislature has given them to regulate.
Thank you.
Yes? Go ahead, Lindsay.
So does that mean that we could maybe look at, have you look at whether or not the increase in population might be considered an increase in risk and therefore might justify putting in an emergency ordinance toward the end of August, perhaps? where we did start requiring face masks in public buildings. Am I understanding you correctly?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes, yes.
You're asking whether the city could consider adopting a emergency ordinance or resolution on face mask usage?
Yes.
Yes, the city could consider that. It has to be articulated in a way that's going to be tailored to the need and to the expediency and to the situation we're addressing. And that's why a lot of the whereases or recitals were included in the previous emergency ordinances and resolutions that you've adopted. You'd have to have a number of those to justify what you're doing. And it would have to be reasonable. It would have to be tailored to take into consideration other laws that are in existence regarding the disabilities and reasonable accommodations of disabled people to be able to wear masks. It might have to take into consideration the ages of children and elderly people, and it could run a whole gamut of things that you'd have to consider as exceptions, but those are certainly things that can be considered by the council. It says in the statute you have the authority to adopt measures that you consider to be necessary and expedient to suppress the spread of disease.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on COVID? Thank you. New business, item 8A, appointment of a Central Ward City Council member. And John, please.
Thank you. I think the council is certainly familiar with this process, but just to kind of state how we got here, so to speak. Kelsey Collier-Wise resigned her Central Ward Council seat back in May, and Lindsay Genowine was appointed to that term, and that term that Kelsey was currently serving ran until the first meeting in July. As we all recall, back in March, Kelsey had filed paperwork for the Central Ward Council seat that would begin with the July 6th meeting. And she made it very clear that with the first meeting in July, when new terms began, that while she was a person-elect, the person who completed the paperwork, she had submitted a letter to the council stating that she did not intend to qualify for the office of Central Ward Council member by taking the oath of office. With our state statutes, the previous person remains to serve until a successor is qualified. We've now passed the 10 days past the date of that first meeting when the person-elect was to qualify, which Kelsey had indicated she was not going to be doing. So the council has before you tonight the appointment of a Central Ward Council member. This appointment, and I'm going to assume perhaps it's Lindsay, unless you set her up to serve for a couple meetings, would be at this meeting. It would last until the first meeting in July of 2021. There would potentially, either way, either have individuals interested in serving the seat file the appropriate papers and or have an election in June of 2021. And that election or that term of office would be from the first meeting in July for the remaining 3 years of the term that was to have begun at our last meeting. So hopefully that makes sense, and that you've heard that a couple times tonight. So the council has an item before you tonight. We'd recommend appointing someone to serve as an individual for the now considered to be vacant Central Ward Council seat.
Okay, do we have a request?
I nominate Lindsay Genowine.
Lindsay Genowine.
Yes, Steve, does that require a second? And a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Second, first and second. Okay, any other comments? Mike, roll call vote, please.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Said aye.
okay. Lindsay, I'm assuming you're going to abstain?
Yes.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Okay, motion passed. Next duty, yes, is Mike, would you please sign her? It's the proper term, I don't want to sign her in, but
We will, I'll administer the oath of office to Lindsay for the Central Ward. So if you'd repeat after me, I state your name,
I, Lindsay Genowine,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Alderman
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Alderman
of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota,
of the City of Vermillion, South Dakota,
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
and congratulations.
Thanks.
New business, item 8B, accept the home rule charter and determine an election date. John, please.
Thank you. This is an item that the City Council began work on last fall when you appointed a home rule charter study committee, and they looked at the idea of a home rule charter. They did some research on home rule charters and presented that to the City Council. The City Council then appointed a home rule charter committee, the study committee made the report on January 20th. In February and March, the City Council appointed the Home Rule Charter Committee, and they were tasked with putting together a Home Rule Charter to present to the City Council. And they did that at your last meeting on July 6th. The Home Rule Charter Committee presented a draft of the charter. A couple days later, on July 10th, they had a meeting with the City Attorney to discuss that draft of the Home Rule Charter, and they did propose a couple of changes. In section 3.03 and 3.04, the Home Rule Charter Committee, in putting that together, had gone into some very good detail about how some of those processes would work. For example, they listed out the duties of a city manager, the powers and duties of a city manager. In visiting with the city attorney, it was felt that perhaps that'd be a little bit simpler to just reference the state statute in Chapter 9-10, where a lot of that language was duplicated. So they made some changes like that. The updated version was posted on the city's website last Monday, July 13th. So the kind of the question maybe before the City Council this evening is if you want to accept the charter as presented and set an election date. When you were first looking at this back in January and then through February and March, there was some discussion about placing it on the general election ballot this November 3rd. We would suggest that perhaps we don't have much time to act on that if you want to do that, because there's certain procedural things that Mike works with the county on to make something like that happen. We do have the chair of the Home Rule Charter Committee, Mike Card, available to answer or address questions that the council might have. He did receive a couple of questions last week. I think it was last Friday. I don't know, Dr. Card, if you want to maybe address those for the benefit of the public and or the individual who had contacted you, if that's acceptable with the President of the Council.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, I'll turn over to Mr. Card then.
Well, again, thank you for having me here this evening. I'm very pleased to have served in this capacity. I have heard 3 questions from citizens that probably require a more official and dependable response than I can give. One dealt with a broad question: are property tax provisions for rebates changed by this charter? And I thought the answer was no, but I thought it was a significant enough question that it should be asked for our legal counsel to respond.
The answer is no.
I thought that was the case, as it was a state law governing property taxes. The next question dealt with what is referable, another broad question.
Yes, go ahead.
To an extent, this dealt with the new section 1.06, which we've titled Limitations on Taxing Authority, and you may wish to speak to that, Mr. McCullough.
As far as your questions on what is referable, this home rule charter proposal would not change anything regarding initiative or referendum as contained in our state constitution and in our statutes. So those rights would remain the same. The part about limitation on taxes, there's a reference to those being referable, and we made it clear that it would be referable based on the exercise of that right by the public. Currently, there's a state case law that says that unless it's an election can be automatically scheduled by a city on a proposal it has adopted, the only entity that can do a referendum petition on an adopted city council provision is the public. And so if something like that were to ever occur, the public would have the right to refer it. They would have to pass the petitions around, though, in order to have that occur.
Would an example of the laws to which you were referring, where the governing body could put the vote to a referendum, be something like the opt-out laws? Opt out of the property tax limitations?
Yes. There are opt-out provisions that apply to different public entities, counties, school districts, and so forth. And I think there are two different ways. Then the public body can put it to a vote. I think there might be a provision on general obligation bonds if it's a new tax, that there's a vote that's required also. But for usual city business, such as we just passed a zoning ordinance change tonight. If somebody didn't like that, then they could pass around a petition to refer it. But they're the ones that have to do it. The public, the city can't automatically do it for them.
Thank you, sir. The last question that I have received dealt with when emergency ordinances go into effect. And our charter seems to indicate, our draft charter seems to indicate that they can go into effect upon passage or at a date that the ordinance would specify. Are there other limitations on when an emergency ordinance could go into effect?
The Home Rule Charter specifies that when you adopt an emergency ordinance, you have to follow the same proceedings that you do to adopt a regular ordinance. The difference being that it's labeled emergency, it's got the 60-day life limitation and so on. So that means there's got to be a first and second reading, and through the second the two readings have to have at least 5 days in between the readings. And so there are those limitations that are already written into the Home Rule Charter by stating that the ordinary proceedings for adopting an ordinance apply to emergency ordinances. And then it does say in the Home Rule that the emergency ordinance, if adopted, would take effect upon its adoption or at a later time as the ordinance would state. And that's in line with virtually all the other home rule ordinances around the state. So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir, it does. Also serving on the committee were Travis Lettler, as well as Steve Ward and Stacy Larson, who is also in the audience, and I don't know if they have heard questions from constituents on the charter.
No, I have not.
I received one question, and it was basically about tax power, and I assured them that nothing changes in this home rule ordinance compared to what we can do now, that we cannot raise taxes without a public vote, as the state law requires.
Travis, at our noon meeting, you mentioned there's a couple of slight changes or clarifications that you cleared with Jim. Would you state those again, please? Or can you? Did you?
Me or Jim?
Well, either one, but you had mentioned before, so go ahead.
Sure. I mentioned at the noon meeting that the only appreciable changes from the draft of the Home Rule Charter that we saw at our earlier July meeting to the draft we see tonight at the July 20th council meeting is section 3.03 and section 3.04, both of which deal with city manager provisions. In the draft of the Home Rule Charter that we had at the last meeting, those had a lot of details. Like we really kind of wrote out all of the city manager's duties, and on the advice of the city attorney, those have been shortened to just refer to the appropriate state statute instead of writing it all out. Because the reasoning would be, if in the future there is a change in the state statute so that the city manager's duties would either grow to include additional things or shrink, we would have to amend the Home Rule Charter. And so for expediency and just, it makes a lot more sense just to reference those sections of state statute that we're referring to, rather than try to write it all out. So those two sections, 3.03 and 3.04, have become a lot shorter, only because instead of writing everything out, we just reference the state SDCL. But those were the only substantive changes from the one draft to tonight's draft.
Thank you, Travis. Council, is there any other questions or? Yes, Julia.
I think that putting this on the November ballot is a really good idea. I think we've talked about this several times. As a political scientist, I know the research that shows that people are more likely to go out and vote in these general elections rather than a special ballot. I think we all intuitively know that. And also, if we can work this out with the county, that's a much better deal than putting together a expensive special election. And so with that, I would move to accept and to encourage the administration to put this on the November ballot, working that out with the county.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Catherine. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Howard?
I was going to ask Mike, are you going to have some public meetings about this before the November election?
President Holland, may I respond?
Yeah, I asked you, Mike.
Yes, please, go ahead.
The answer is yes. We had advertised meetings of the Charter Development Committee, and unfortunately, no one chose to join us electronically during our 3 months. So we also realized that now that if this motion passes, we will continue to reach out. This morning, Councilwoman Helwig and I were on South Dakota Public Radio talking broadly about home rule, and committee member Matt Fairholm and I will be speaking to Rotary. We've spoken with a number of other civic organizations, but as we neared the date when this would have to go on the ballot or not, we decided to wait to schedule those specific meetings, and among the committee we would determine who would be presenting. There's some ideas about having some of these perhaps at a picnic shelter with appropriate physical distancing between individuals, a more broadly advertised electronic meeting such as this to be able to answer citizen questions and concerns.
Thank you.
Long answer to yes, Mr. Wilson.
Yes, Travis.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Card for his leadership of this committee, and also to thank city staff. They gave up a lot of evening hours to slog through a lot of different home rule charters. So I think without Dr. Card's leadership, Dr. Fairholm's experience from working with the Home Rule Charter Committee in the past, and city staff, this could have been a very painful process. And I'm very proud of the product that we've put together in the past few months. And so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody that I've been able to work with on this committee.
This was very helpful as well. So don't sell yourself short.
Any other comments?
I would also want to thank Stacy and AJ Franken, individuals who provided expertise and networks of individuals to give responses to these provisions that we otherwise wouldn't have had.
Thank you. Well, it's been first and seconded, so Mike, roll call vote, please.
Hellwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward, Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Motion passes. New business item HC, request to close North Pine Street from East Cedar Street to south end of Alpha 5 property on Saturday, August 15th, 2020, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And note that this is a change from August 20th. James, please.
Yes, thank you. So this request that you have in front of you is essentially an update to a request that the council approved on March 2nd. This bid day, recruitment bid day street closure would close North Pine from East Cedar to the end of the Alpha Phi House south property line for their recruitment bid day. Originally, this was slated to take place on August 20th. Again, due to kind of the entire school schedule being shifted to allow college classes to start earlier, the sorority has requested that we alter this street closure to help them accommodate that. As in the previous request, we've notified all the affected city departments, and they did not voice any concerns about this request. Since this request would take place on a Saturday, I would note that city staff would drop the barricades or what have you off near the house. The applicant would have to set them up and then take them down, and city staff would come and pick them up on Monday. So, yeah, that being said, administration recommends that you approve this request to move the bid day street closing from August 20th to August 15th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Thank you. There is no public here to comment on this, so I'll turn it to council. Any comments or statements?
Move the approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so Mike, roll call vote, please.
Hellwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Motion passes, thank you for your request passes. So item 8D is Joint Power Board Vermillion Citizen Appointment. And first of all, I'd like to thank the general public because we had more than the one we needed. And I appreciate the public for taking interest in the city. Now for the city council part, I didn't get response from everybody. Shame on you guys. I'd like to have gotten more, but I have enough. And so I'd like to appoint Mark Sweeney to this position on the Joint Powers Board. So,
Move approval.
Second.
any other comment? Okay. Mike, roll call vote, please.
Hellwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Humphrey.
Humphrey,
Aye.
sorry, Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes, or selection passes. There are no bid openings, so city manager report, please, John.
Thank you. Just a reminder, we've been trying to make this aware to the community. The census is underway. They've extended some of that deadline for that. We please ask that people take a minute to complete the census. We have a response rate in Clay County around 63%. We'd like to certainly bolster that number up here more. If you've ever wondered, does it make a difference? Right now we're dealing with the CARES Act, and part of that is based on population. It helps both our city and county. Both entities are eligible for funding, and our population is a big piece of that. So there's a direct way, immediate way right now that makes a difference. So if you haven't taken a moment, please go online. It takes about 10 minutes to complete the census. It's an important aspect of our community and our county to do that. And after you're done with the census, and only if you've completed the census, the fire department and Park and Rec are offering hydrant parties every Tuesday right now. Those will go through July 28th. We have the 4 locations, so we have 2 more of them left. It's the Bluffs Golf Course at 1 p.m., Trinity Lutheran Church at 2 p.m., Hillside Church at 3 p.m., and the Armory parking lot at 4 p.m. We've had a pretty good turnout for this. Sometimes the weather's made a difference in terms of how much has been going on there, but it's something that does make a difference. The recycling trailers have been placed back out in the community. We ask that people please follow the directions posted on the trailers with regard to the materials that you place there. It was referenced earlier this evening. Just a reminder that Thursdays on the Platts have started, so every Thursday through the end of August right now, depending on how it goes, from 4 to 8 p.m. West Main Street, from the west line of the intersection of Main and Court, west to the west line of Raggan and Platts, and then Market Street, from Main Street south through Radigan Platts is closed, set up, and take down and for the actual event. And then kind of a neat program that we have in partnership with our supplemental power supplier. Every Vermillion Light and Power residential meter will be eligible to receive 4 LED light bulbs for free. This is a program of energy assistance or energy sustainability that we've been working with, and so every residential meter of a light and power customer will receive 4 free light bulbs if they're interested. Right now, we are finalizing a plan to distribute those during the final week of July, next week. Starting with the 27th, we'll have several different opportunities throughout the course of that week in different locations where you can pick up your free 4 light bulbs. We will also be putting details on the city's website, social media, and then depending on how quickly we get this finalized in either the broadcaster and or the Plain Talk. So look for more information on that later this week. That's all that I have.
Thank you, John. Any comments or questions? Yes, Steve.
John, I've been asked to ask you about the recycling trailers, if they are coming back to, locations like Jolly School and near the liquor store.
Yes, those are placed out last week.
Oh,
they're back
great.
out in the community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Okay. Next is invoices payable. Do you have any questions for Mike?
Move we pay our bills.
Second.
Okay. Motion seconded. And so roll call vote, please, Mike.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
Aye.
Lettler,
Aye.
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. Okay. Bills will be paid. We have no consensus agenda, so
We adjourn.
Second.
it's been motioned and seconded that we adjourn. Once again, roll call vote, Mike.
Helwig,
Aye.
Humphrey,
Aye.
Genowine,
First cup of coffee
Aye.
you make in the morning.
Lettler,
Aye.
That
Price,
Aye.
Ward,
Aye.
Wilson,
Aye.
President Holland.
Aye. We are adjourned, and thank you all. Appreciate it.
You know that first cup of coffee you make in the morning? That TV you turn on to catch the news? Or that nightlight in your daughter's bedroom? They're all things we sometimes take for granted will always be there. From light switches to laptops, they're all powered by the reliability of Vermillion Light and Power. Learn more online at vermillion.us.
Everyone counts in our neighborhood. Everyone here is a neighbor. You count too. Yes, you count too. Come on, neighbor. Everyone counts in Vermillion, yes. Everyone counts in the census. You count too. Yes, you count too.
Mr. Nate,
Well, hello, Chuck Coyote.
do I count in the census?
Of course you do, Chuck. You're living in Vermillion on April 1st. You're a neighbor. You count.
But I'm a full-time student.
Still, you count.
But I rent an apartment.
Still a neighbor. You still count.
G'day, mate. What about me? I'm on a student visa.
Our international friends all count too.
Fair dinkum?
But my parents in Brookings still claim me on their taxes.
Still, Chuck, you count.
But
Listen here, little buddy. You still count here, and every person we miss is like $1,600 less in federal funding for this community, and that hurts people and puppets alike. So just take this iPad, go to census.gov on March 19th, and fill it out. Everyone counts in our neighborhood. Everyone here is a neighbor. You count too. Yes, you count too. Be a good neighbor and fill out your census, friends.